Hey YouTube, it's Taki with TaqiTech. So in this episode, we're going to talk about global versus public variables. And there really isn't that much of a difference between the two. I did some research here, the best and the most in-depth ex, explanation that I could find was from um, Chuck Pearson's website. I think it's Chuck Pearson. No, I think he's a Chip Pearson, his website. Sorry, Chuck Pearson was a basketball player. It's a great site, top three website. I couldn't rank them, but basically, this is a whole discussion on scope of variables and procedures, and he talks about global variables and global scope and project scope. And basically, global scope means that you could pass variables not only into different modules, but you could also pass variables into different projects, so different workbooks, or sending a variable from Excel to I don't even know if Word would really be correct on that. I would say from Excel to Excel, maybe even Access. You got a whole different project running in Access. Because there you could build a project. You could build projects on both Excel and Access, whereas you could create objects more or less with PowerPoint and Word. You're really not going to have a project that you could write in VBA on PowerPoint or Word or even Outlook or any of the other Microsoft products. So basically, that's what global scope is. You will see when I first learned to write Visual Basic in Visual Basic Studio about a year or two before .NET, we used global variables. We never used public, we never used private, we used global, or we just dimmed it. We really didn't get into talking about declaring variables at the module level. Let me show you what I mean by that. So this is something else I'm going to show you. So basically, let's say here, I'm in this main module here, and all the way up at the top, I'm going to declare a module or variable, and I'll do the easy one, dim, and I'll just call it test var or test int as integer. Okay, so this is a module level variable, and it should be available to every single subroutine and function within this module. I don't think this particular variable will be available to different modules within the same project unless I changed it to public. And then it would be available to all the different modules in the project. So there was a change in, well, I think basically, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think C-based languages or languages that were based off of people that wrote C programming that later on made a different language or came up with like advancements on the C language and called it like C++, or they did something that was completely different and they did like Java or Python, something along those lines. I think C used public and private, and I think this is what Visual Basic is adopted over the years and probably what's used in .NET. So basically, don't want to break this part of the project here. Let's see here. All right. So basically, dim equals private. So if I say private here, then that means that only the subroutines and functions within this module can access this variable. If I call this public, that means that other modules can access this variable, and I'm pretty sure I can pass this public variable to another project. What I got from reading here was global was basically thought of as being able to pass the variables to different projects, but it's not really something that we're going to use a whole lot here. There was also some other restrictions that I also read too. Basically, when I went to Stack Overflow, it just basically said that let's see here, global comes from older versions of VB and most likely was kept for backwards compatibility. This one talks about option private module, which means that the public variables can't be seen by other projects. So, I mean, it seems like that's initially what the idea was for global. It wasn't used a whole lot, and then eventually we just started doing public variables and private variables. Again, there was a whole big discussion I found on Mr. Excel, which is a great source. So, I mean, Chuck Pearson, I'm calling him Chuck again. I'm pretty sure it's Chip. Chip Pearson's website. Let me get to the banner here. Pearson Software Consulting, great website. Stack Overflow, of course, and Mr. Excel are really good websites. These are the three websites that I use the most when I'm designing my code. Not the macro recorder. A lot of people like to use a macro recorder, and that's great because if you're trying to figure something out in Excel, awesome, use the macro recorder. If you're trying to think about how I'm going to make Excel do something though that you really can't do in Excel currently, like let's log into Facebook. Go ahead, use the macro recorder on that, see how far you get. Let's make a schedule complex timesheet. Okay, go ahead, run the macro recorder. What you doing? Nothing. You're not even getting to point 8. You need to be able to think outside the box. So macro recorders are a great tool, but this is where it's at. You got to do your research and say, okay, first off, if you're going to think of a project outside the box, you need to say, did anybody else do this? And how far did they get? And what did they find? And sometimes you find it, and it's almost a done project, and you just have to tweak a few things to meet the requirements of what you need to do or what your customer needs you to do. Other times, you get some great ideas, but it needs a lot of work. And that's basically where this project is at too, because I've started it twice already, and because other things have come up, other projects came up, I had to abandon it. This time I'm going to try to see it through, try to finish it out. The other thing I wanted to also mention too, as I saw here, all these different modules, I said, boy, I'm wondering why I didn't make class modules. And I know why I didn't make class modules. But I could really see here where I'm really starting to get into more of an object-oriented approach. Not to say that it's the full-blown object-oriented programming, but an approach to writing code in VBA code in Excel. This is how it would look if I was actually going to take a full-blown object-oriented approach. So like, instead of this break module, where is it at? Right here, I would have the class module here. And basically to create a class module, all you have to do is highlight your project and then do insert class module. And you get a class module here. And within that class module, things get really complicated, so to speak. When I bring it up here, it's not going to look that bad. I wish I could make this bigger for you guys. Let's see here. No, that's not going to work. But unfortunately, they don't have a zoom in on the code here. But basically, I've defined two different properties of a class. So this is called a class break. That's what I named it here. And break is actually, I think, a reserved word. It's something that we use sometimes in programming languages. I didn't want to run it, and I know it was a reserved word. I know that there was already either another object or a property that's called break within VBA Excel, and I didn't want to run into that, so I called this SS break. Gave it two different properties here, just basically two different attributes that it has. I gave it an ID and a time. And then I did my getters and setters, so to speak. In VBA, it's a little bit different because we have getters and letters. Oh, wait, not letters. Anyway, I think you get the point. They call them lets. So instead of setting it, and there's a reason for that too, as you'll see in a second. And now let me just get to that. So basically, you have the get, where it will return the value of what you need. So you're going to return it as the integer, and it's going to basically say, I think this might actually be backwards here. I didn't really test this out, I just wrote it. So basically, break ID will equal the local break ID. Oh, let me... Okay, so this should be equals L break ID. All right, perfect. So basically this returns the value of the local variable. And this right here, it sets, so you're passing in a value and it will set the local variables to that value. And then break time, same thing as before, only I have it reversed again, and I have break ID here because you can tell I copied and pasted it. So let me fix this, and let me just do it this a little bit more easier this time. And we'll put the equal and get rid of this one. All right, there we go. Oh, I think all right. So here we are, writing code, but not code that will really help too much on the project, and I'm really making a mess of things with this project already. Okay. So basically, when you get down to let me go to the main module here, and let's do, this is what this does. And yeah, okay. So we're going to do test subroutine test OOP. All right. So first thing we need to do is we need to dim break test period equals, and then we call it SS break. So we're dimming out the object basically. Let me make sure I got this right here. So dim and it should be as. Okay. So there we go, dim as that, and then we need to set it. So this is actually where you set it. So and that says break. You should say break. So my fingers are not helping me today for some reason. Equals. This is where I think I got thrown off before. All right. So now we have this variable here called break TP, break time period. First we dimmed it as the new object that we have here, SS break, and as you can see, this is getting way complex here. Maybe a little bit more complex than we need to get with this project, because I'm still everything that object oriented would bring to me, I got it right here already with these modules. I don't necessarily need to do this to have the same complexity, and then basically I won't have the same flexibility, and it might be a little bit more complicated. So to each his own. If you're comfortable coding like this, then that's cool. So I'm setting it as a new I basically have made break TP as a new object here. So I set it all up here, and now what I can do is this. I can use the dot operator on it, and then I could do break ID equals 55. So, and then I'm guessing, I haven't really played around too much with this, so to test it out, to do the get method, I can do something like, we could dim an integer up here, and then we could just bring the test in down here, equals, so I'm guessing that's how you get it back. I haven't played around with it too much yet. Maybe there might be, if I'm going to, when I start using it, I'll use it on a smaller project. This project's scope is a little too big, and this episode is a little too big, if you ask me. We got way off the topic here. We started going into a lot of different directions that had nothing to do with the project. So I wish I could have start this over and say, if you're don't watch this video unless you're really interested in global versus private and object oriented digressions into VBA. But thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. The next episode, we are actually going to get into actually coding this project. We're going to do the real easy stuff. We're going to basically, let's get back here to the sheet. We're going to calculate the time between these two, print it here, and then just real simply print it out here. So it should look like this next time. This is what we should have printed out. So I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take it easy.